All right. Hey, welcome to another podcast.
The pod.
Man, dude, we had a great Sunday.
Sunday was awesome.
What. So one of the things we always on Monday mornings, we do wins and losses. We got a little spreadsheet that we've been going, just trying to.
I forgot to tell you about something too.
Oh, shoot. What'd you do?
No, just all from the disco cooking and the flavoring process. It was awesome. There's some good stuff happening.
I don't even know how to take it. Okay, listen. So anyways, one of the things we were talking about was as the years have gone on, you always look for little signs of health within a community, within a church. And you look for little things that you're like, okay, well, like just because we're here Sunday morning doesn't mean it's healthy. Just because we're here Sunday morning, even if we're full, doesn't mean it. One of the things that I picked up on.
So metrics
is the quality by which our potlucks have been run this year. Yeah. And I mean that in the sense of the guys stepping up. Like we had workhorses working the discos and cleaning and doing all that.
It's been
was
the last
awesome.
several. It's been outrageous.
But the amount of people who bring those stuff, the amount of people who stay. And so it's been really good. Like it was really blessed on Sunday. I can't again speak highly enough of those who keep showing up and giving testimonies and walking up on stage.
I thought it was interesting. We were talking in the pavilion. I don't know if I was talking to Juanita or someone else, but when the pavilion was built, it was built with the idea that you could probably double the amount of people that were attending, and it'd be plenty of room. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you're like thinking about like thinking ahead and like visioning and planning and stuff like that. And I mean, we had 8-9 tables set out outside the pavilion with like 7-8 chairs around each table just to handle the capacity of the peak seating of that moment.
Let's actually talk about this. So I was here for that part. So, and I don't remember the exact year, but we sold that land to the school. The church was really small already at this point. We sold the land to the school. So we had a chunk of change sitting in there. But the church, we were really struggling in terms of community, in terms of actually connecting. We're a smaller church, lots of brokenness. And if I am correct, and Isaac, you can correct me on this, and Isaac has been a visioneer. He's been at when I think back at a lot of these memories, Isaac Fair is one of those names that keeps popping up. The way I remember it is he had the idea, let's spend the money, let's build that, it'll always be good, but at least it'll give us something where instead of the money sitting in the bank, then we can, gather underneath it, whatever. And so it's interesting now when you look out there on a Sunday, you're like, the seeds that were sowed, that's a lot of years ago. To my recollection, that's a lot of years ago. And in a whole different place, and they could never have envisioned it. So it's always kind of cool when you think about the decisions we're making now. You're like, in 10 years, we can guess. We can kind of try to take an educated metric as to what we think it's going to be. But
it's hard.
All right, so what we're going to talk about today, something that is really not a new conversation for the church.
No.
But I think it's something that's gotten really fiery in culture.
It's been a phenomenon, I think, that's been ongoing to our neighbors to the south for some time now, but not necessarily something that's been as ongoing in the Canadian church. And I think that's a interesting distinction. Well,
I would argue that I know what you're saying, because you're talking more at the political level and some of that. When I look back at so what we're talking about is, and let's back up just a little bit. What I want to talk about is, why do people get so angry? What is it within a group? What are the dynamics that cause people to do outrageous things? And I'm not just talking, obviously this is sparked by the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So obviously there's some thoughts from there, but we see this all the time in churches. We see this in social groups. You see this in communities. And things seem to be, bubbling, or there's some tension, or sometimes there's just not, and it looks healthy. And then all of a sudden, one day, everything just goes all to poop.
And snaps.
Right. And you go, how did we get here? Again, if I go back, and I can only give my church history, but there is lots of church history, whichever denomination you're a part of major church splits, of people who at one point chose this as a home church, chose this as the place and the people they wanted to serve alongside. And somewhere, a long time, something happened that we went from being brothers and sisters to, I hate you and I think that you suck. I need to leave.
Yeah.
Right? And like, we're not talking about like a little bickerments or bicker. That's not a word.
Bickerments?
Bickerments?
That's really good.
Is that a word? Bickerments?
I think it's a combination of disagreement and bickering and bickerments.
But you know what I mean? Like,
Could
it
also
doesn't
be
even
something you pick up at the store on the way to church to make your breath fresh.
Honey, give me some of those bickerments, please. But like,
no, I
how do we get
yeah.
like, when you look back, drums were an issue like that. And like the churches, like ours, we had some good conversation about pews and chairs, but like pews and chairs, statistically, if we do a building project, like 90% of pastors end up leaving the church after a building project. Like there's all these different things that for whatever reason, they cause you to end up being really divided and really heated.
I remember working on a church building and was very directly told to make sure that I only come with very specific colors and only offer 2 options and with a very specific recommendation for one so that it would avoid any sort of split. And like that is a very real thing. Like we're talking colors inside a building and it could be that hot of a topic. I think you're asking a very, what is it about human nature, like us at our core, that seems to grab a hold of something that has less meaning than the life of the person that we're opposing.
Right. And so I want to share a couple things that have stood out to me lately, and then you can just kind of chime in on your own. But so I was reading, and I don't remember if it's so I've been reading 2 Charles DeHaig's books. So I did The Power of Habit, and then I went through Super Communicators, and so I'm going to go through that one again because that one is just phenomenal.
Who's the author?
Charles DeHaig.
Charles DeHaig.
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 Power of Habit was written like 10 years ago, but Super Communicators is just one that just came out. So he did a podcast with Carey Nieuwhof.
Okay.
That's how the name kind of stuck, and then I listened to the first book, and I was like, oh, this is good. But he talked, and I think it's that one, or it's the preaching course I'm taking. I sometimes get confused as to where I'm getting this, and so somebody other than me. And their challenge was, as a pastor, when you prepare a sermon, when you go and you speak to someone, don't assume they're dumb. Assume they're intelligent. And it was one of those little things that if you're a part of my church, you're like, did you think I was dumb? It was one of those little things that I've been here 16 years. And you do get to this little place where you just kind of go like, I know what I'm doing, which is good. Like I'm fairly confident in my work. Like, I'm 16 years, whatever craft you're at 16 years, you've got some skill set.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look out, the challenge was, what do you see? And when you write a sermon, are you assuming that those people have said no to Jesus, that they are not nearly where you are, or are you assuming that they too are following Jesus the same way you are? And it was a huge challenge to me.
So a mind shift of what you're saying in terms of where you're hoping that the message will land from a receiving standpoint, like
it all starts in how this goes into these conversations is. So when I was having a conversation, and I love these again, if you know, I wouldn't say I'm political, but I'm smart enough to know that I have to be careful where I say what different things, just because people don't know context. But I grew up in a house where me and my dad bickered a lot. My sister's very opinionated. Like that was normal to me. But then when I start looking at this and I start like, I have opinions on what happened last week. I have opinions on all sorts of things. It struck me as interesting that as soon as somebody has an opposing idea, there's a little thing in my mind that goes, oh, they don't quite get it.
Mm.
They're not quite as smart as me. And it's not one of those things I would ever articulate. I would never say when me and Patrick are arguing, or me and Will, or me and Randy, or me and Trevor, or me and Josie, like I would never out loud say, hey, look, you're not as smart as me. But there's that little part in your brain that goes, if you don't see it the way I see it.
Yeah, you're dumb.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been one of those things. And I don't know if that's just me. I know that, and I get this strongly from my mom's side, but I've always been terrified of being too proud. And so always, like as a kid, I remember that. Even now as like, you always want to, like, I don't want people to think I'm proud, which usually when you don't want people to think you're something, that's the thing you battle with. And so I'm probably too proud. But when I think of who I am, and I think of how these arguments unfold, I kind of go, that little thing, that little voice that I allow inside my head to go, I'm not fully listening to you because I don't actually perceive you as being smart. It changes everything.
So not really dialoguing with someone.
No.
Only dialoguing to the extent that you have something to use in your argument for your reply.
Right.
So you're missing out on a human connection by doing so.
And you're the reason I have the opinion I do. So you got to understand. So let's use gun control just for fun. For fun.
Yeah.
The reason I want to use this one is I have never owned a gun. I have never been in a situation where I've needed a gun. And so I have never in my life felt that I was in a place where I felt unsafe. So then I've never so when I'm talking to somebody, whether they're an assault survivor or they've been robbed, even in our community, we've just never been. I think it's people look at us and they go, what could they possibly have? This is not going to be worth it, right? But I've never had that. So then my opinion is, so I grew up in a home where mom and dad were very protective, where they ensured we had a great upbringing. I never had a moment where I felt scared for my safety, where I felt like I live in turmoil. I lived in Dufferin on Elmer. We had great neighbors. I would never have thought of getting robbed or anything.
See, that's really interesting because I grew up in probably the safest place in St. Thomas. And yet my personality as a kid, from age 6 to probably 12, 13, 14 is, man, I had a degree of paranoia. I had a degree of if I was downstairs in the basement watching a TV show, was some weirdo looking through the basement window trying to scope out the house. A latchkey kid from school. My parents wouldn't be home, and I would come home with a key to go inside as, a 10-year-old or 11-year-old, and I'm wondering if someone's in the house.
Right.
Is someone in there? Do I need to bring a baseball bat inside? I remember coming home one time, and our furnace was making a banging noise from the startup of it. I literally went next door and grabbed my neighbor's dad, and I think there's someone in my house. Mm-hmm. Can you come over and have a look? And he's like, I don't know if he grabbed a baseball bat or he was like, oh, I'll come and have a look. I'll check it out for you.
Oh, I'll come and have
Well, there was nobody in there. Everything was
that
just
tone already.
It was just already it was safe. But and I don't know, that just felt like it was part of it was woven into my DNA as a makeup, even though if you look at all the statistics and all the truth and all the information, we had such a low degree of probability of that being a reality.
Absolutely.
And where we lived. And yet in my head, I was like,
But again, that framework, and again, I had things I was scared of. If my brother, who had to calm me down multiple times at night when I was scared of my own little things, don't get me wrong. It was not that I was never afraid. So I don't want this to come across as somebody being a liar. No. It just, to me, and maybe I should word this better. To me, there was never a connection where I felt like I needed to arm myself to feel safe, right?
Yeah.
And again, so I'm not saying this because I have one viewpoint or another. I'm just saying this is how it was. And so then when me and you chat, and it's interesting that you would say that because I would have assumed you're confident. And you're a guy who when we first met, with basketball, you're aggressive, you're all those things. So I make all sorts of judgments. And so then when me and you, let's say, and we've never actually had this conversation, if we were to dive deep into where we stand on guns, I don't know where you're actually coming from, and you have no clue where I'm coming from. But if I go into it and I go, if he doesn't see it the way I see it, he's an idiot.
Right.
It immediately kills the conversation.
No, I would totally agree. And I find one of the complexities about the ongoings of last week is that I don't even know if we understand the culture about which we're commenting about.
No.
And I feel like that's part of the, we don't even talk about that. We're we don't get that culture. Yeah. We live in Canada, man.
Yeah.
You think about it, the only reason why we don't have the need for the resources of the weaponry we have is literally the fact that the dudes to the south have a really big stick that they can swing at any time, and we have no necessity to arm ourselves. We can keep flying the same F-16s that are, the Hornets that are outdated and refitted and should have been retired, 40 years ago, and the helicopters that never got bought, and all those kind of things that you look at as like a nation that you would be proud about. The previous 3 generations of submarines that we buy from, England and we never use, because well, for what? We're never going to be in a place where we're going to so some of that part of the conversation, we just kind of go, I don't even know how I can really speak into stuff like that from a I get you kind of way. When I think of literally, we've traveled to Belize, mission trip to Belize, and we go to a certain part of Belize, and we're invited to a youth hangout. And the youth hangout is they're going to get in their pickup trucks with their shotguns, and they're going to go drive through the swamps and see what they can shoot. And I'm in the passenger seat as a 40-something-year-old guy, and there's shotguns going off my side window, and all of them are hooping and hollering, and this is normal, this is fun. And I'm that was inches from my ear.
Right. So when you're talking to somebody from Belize about this, there's a whole other concept.
No,
there's a whole other thought.
What are you talking about?
And I think that gets to my second point. I think we overestimate how intelligent we are. And the reason I say that, and I want to say this as kind as possible, but...
Oh, okay. I understand what you're saying.
If I knew how to run North America, why do I struggle to lead a small church?
I would go further. Why do I have a hard time in my house seeing the progress that I would like to make in certain areas happen?
I just think it's so arrogant of people. I don't know how to resolve the issues I have with people who don't like me sometimes. Right? And I'm not going to pretend I have tons of enemies. I don't. I have some people who don't like me. I don't know how to make that go. I don't know the right steps to take. I don't know how to always end that. And so then you look at some of these conflicts and you have such strong opinions, and it's but you Albert, if you can figure out how to love that neighbor that you don't like, then let's talk about how we get to world peace.
Sometimes I feel this is, I feel it. I know it's 2 different subjects, but I feel it's the same kind of thinking. It's, being a parent of 2 boys and having gone through, we're up to almost 9 and 10 now. But when they were babies, and, we have one that would be a 19-month-old and one that would be a newborn. And man, we were having difficulties with sleep training, and we were having difficulties with, some of the food situations, and we were having there were some complexities there.
Right.
And you would have other parents just, they you look at their kids, and their kids sleep through the night. They eat when they're supposed to eat. And they look at you well, what you're doing is you're wrong. And literally, I remember with Ryder, we tried literally everything that we could to get that kid to sleep through the night. We tried all the techniques. We tried the 2, 5, 7, 10, 15, 20, walk away, come back. We tried all everything that we could possibly figure out to see. We wanted to sleep, man. We were taking advice. Your kid sleeps through the night and you've never had an issue with your 3 kids. That's fantastic. Tell us what the secret is. Oh, we just put them to bed. We tried that, man. We tried it. It did not work. It just wasn't that simple. You're not doing it right. I guess. Right. But it just didn't go for us. Yeah. And it just seemed like the information that was given was just completely a different language.
Okay, so let's go with that. Thank you for bringing us to that. When somebody's kid is struggling, the first thought for you now is compassion.
Yeah.
But if you've had any parenting conversations with people, when somebody else's kid isn't well behaved, what's your first thought? You suck as a parent.
Right. Yeah.
100%. So again, a lot of this plays out in such little thing. And I think, again, I'm going on all of this. If you're listening to this and you're fired up or you get offended by something, I'm making the assumption you're a follower of Jesus. If you're not a follower of Jesus, this is a whole different conversation we need to have. I'm making the assumption that those of us who are choosing to respond to life and culture in a certain way, we're doing it because we follow Jesus.
Right.
And I want to be very clear on that because, again, so that example leads into, I was looking up here just because I wanted to word it right. So 2 Chronicles 7, this is a very familiar passage to a lot of people, but so God is talking and he says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land. So one of the things that I guess would be my point 3 would be when we allow ourselves to get to the position where we demean others and we are determined we know all the answers, our ability to actually see God in that moment disappears. So when you think of the Beatitudes, and I always think about this because it's crazy to me. It's like, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. It's always been a weird thing because you're like, well, you can't actually see God, right? Like, we know this. We can't actually physically see God. Like, it's through scripture, and then you have all these different passages on it, and he doesn't come by in the, he comes by in a small whisper instead of the fire and whatever. When we allow ourselves, and this is what I see so much in social media, and I see in my own heart. I want to be very clear. This is not y'all have it, y'all are sucking and I'm great. What I see so much is when I allow myself to get that angry and that on my high horse, the best way I can say it. Because again, when you're not humble, you're on your horse. And anybody who disagrees with you, they're obviously dumb. They don't know what they're talking about. When you're there is nothing in scripture that would back you being able to say, and God is leading me. Because he's just not. He doesn't work in that. God does not force you to follow. He does not force you to do things. So if you are not humble enough, he's not hearing from you. Mm-hmm. Like, and this is New Testament, Old Testament. You can pull up a ton of passages on this, but the relationship between us and God, if we really want God to heal our land, God will endlessly go back to a place of start with you. Mm-hmm. And we desperately need it. Well, like, let's be honest here. Like, one of the things that I don't think gets enough conversation is we need help. You look at our country, you look at whatever issue you want to bring up, we need help. Like, we are politically wound up. We are relationally wound up. There are so many parts. We need that. The problem is, for those of us as followers of Jesus, scripture says, then get on your knees, humble yourself before God, seek his face. And then he's given some basic things. So, and we talked about this last couple of Sundays, and I don't want to beat this dead horse, but just because somebody disagrees with you, like, Jesus gives no out. So he doesn't have like, okay, so love your neighbor unless.
Or until.
Right. There just isn't. And if the person is your enemy, then you pray for them and you pray blessings on them and you do. So we know how to navigate this stuff. But somehow we have allowed, and I don't even know who to fully blame. This is why I'm trying to be very careful with this, because I don't want this to be useless and we get caught up in the same mumbo jumbo others do. But somewhere along the line, we stopped believing that God was in charge of this world. Because if we believed that, and we've said this for a couple of years already, and we've struggled to live it, I'll be honest, like, if we believed that, our prayer lives would be different. If we believed that, we would listen more and talk less. And so when I look at, where we are as a church, and I go, man, like, a lot of the lessons we learned as a church over the last couple of years, if we would implement those into the way we treat people outside of the church, our region would barely know what to do with themselves. Mm-hmm. Why do we keep going back to the other way? Like, why do we keep allowing ourselves? And so I think that's just, I
got questions. Like, in my brain, I go to, why do we default to allowing somebody to dictate us what it means to be a follower of Jesus rather than letting Jesus dictate that to us?
Right.
Like, I think that's an ongoing, like, I think you see that play out. Like, I don't know. I just think to Jesus and his disciples, his like group of 12 misfits that he called.
Yeah.
And they were like around that guy for 3 years, like intensely watching him and following him. And yet there was interesting conversations that we're having. Like, do I get to sit at your right hand? You know, like, oh, when's he going to bring the kingdom? Like, when's he going to overthrow the government? Because they were dealing with their own repressed state of feeling like the government was over them, and you know, and
they were just feeling it. It was
like this was like the reality, and you know, we sometimes can, you know, picture ourselves in those same situations. I mean, especially coming through COVID. I mean, there was tons of people who felt like, you know, the oppression of, like, that's a reality of kind of like a feeling, and yet you see Jesus's response.
Right.
You know, it wasn't militant, which is interesting. You know, and yet it wasn't passive,
right,
which is interesting.
Right.
And I feel like there's a level of difficulty. I don't know if it's difficult. I don't even know if that's the right word, but like to like sit down at his feet and let him be your teacher is something different.
Yeah, I think that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
I don't think, if we're being honest, and again, I think a lot of us struggle with this, but do you actually trust that God is leading?
I would say, yeah, like based on some of my key responses, personally speaking, there are a lot of times no. Like based on some of my key responses.
But that's why we're not at his feet.
Right.
I mean, it's why we're so wound up about a lot of this stuff is and I think there is some very complex things, like, so this book, Super Communicator, super fascinating, and Power of Habit, both put together. But they talk a lot about the manipulation that companies use to get you to buy products, that they get you to believe certain things, right? You like even the impact of reels. So there's a lot of brain games being played that I don't even know if we're completely aware of half the time.
The color red, somebody was saying, like,
yeah, there's that. There's piles of them. That's a whole other podcast. But you know, there's some of that where we're like. We're not even sure what to think. We're manipulated into thinking something, or rage baited, as kids would say now. Like, but I do think like a lot of it goes back to like life purpose. Like if my goal, if my belief is that God has a purpose and a plan for me, and my end goal is to face him and hear him say, well done, it requires that I allow my life to turn out the way he wants it to.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think Jesus celebrated his enemies or opposition being defeated? Do you know what I'm saying?
I mean,
like,
yeah,
do you think he was happy when Judas got whatever was coming to him, got it? Like,
no, I mean, there's strong evidence. But again, there's so much to it. I feel like I'm over easy answering the question, but no, like absolutely not. Like he's being nailed to the cross, and he's like, Father, you need to forgive these guys. They actually don't know what they're doing. Like that's wild. But again, that goes to a couple of points. The one is Jesus just was not that concerned about what people thought. He's like, my job is to fulfill the role that my Father gave me. And when you looked at his life, every metric said failure. Even if the 12 had stayed faithful, you'd go like, God was on earth for 33 years and 12 followers. There's no metric anywhere in any part of the world that goes, man, that's successful. This was God. So when I look at that, and then I look back at my own life, and then you look at, where we are as a culture, and you, okay, well, I know where I would like culture to get. The question just becomes, am I willing to walk the path that God has called me to? And for most of us, I think the answer is no. I think that's where a lot of this, when you're a follower of Jesus and you're lashing out the way people did last week, it's just not Jesus. I don't care. Like you can give whatever justification you want. It's just not Jesus.
Yeah, I don't see it in Scripture.
But that's not the only one. Like that, there's lots. Like that. I mean, that's our firecracker right now. But there's lots of examples of that. But question is, are you being faithful? And I just don't think people. I don't see the evidence in the North American church that is a very prominent question. I hear it endlessly that people want to die and hear it. They want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. I just don't see it in their sacrifice. Because that's what it's going to require. Like anybody can follow Jesus as long as it doesn't cost them anything. So in your wealth, in your all those things, yeah, easy. If it doesn't change anything and you still get to do what you want, great. But the Jesus I know, who's always trying to shift and shape and prune and grow you, is not going to give you a comfortable life. If you always have comfort, you're not following. You just can't. Like, and we have piles of people that we know personally that have lived a long time. Nobody ever has that story. So when you look at that and you, okay, with Jesus' life, like his whole purpose, despite the fact that everyone said your life is a failure, everyone said your life isn't even worth living. His entire purpose was, I want to be faithful to who God called me to be. And so when we look at this, if we're just going to be honest about it in that moment, I have to go, can I actually trust God? And so really interesting that we were talking today. I was listening to my preaching course and they talk about 4 layers of sin. So when you're preaching, there's the 4 layers. There's the what would be considered gross sins. So that's the first level. Like that's the really like murder, like the big, massive ones. And then there's the conscious sins. So the sins that you've chosen, like they're premeditated, you're doing them. Then there's the unconscious ones that you just do. It's an instinct or something. Like that's usually where people will justify it and say, well, anger's and, my family or, whatever that thing is. Like I don't want to point out one thing, but whatever that thing is. And then there was a 4th one. And oh man, I wish I knew the exact word, but it was sins that are caused by a lack of trust. And so it's when God has called you to something, and it's not a decision between good and evil, it's a decision between good and God. Can I trust God with this? Mm-hmm. Am I willing to risk this? Am I willing to sacrifice it? And he said, so when, in terms of preaching, what was interesting was he was like, our preaching typically does really well for the first 2. Like it equips people, they know how to do that. But like with the 4th one, he's like, man, people would tell me like, you need to be led by the Holy Spirit. And he's like, that sounds great. I don't know how. Like, how would that work? But that underlying thing, when you look at a lot of this and you read the comments, is your stance on whatever issue, is that just based because you so desperately want to pursue after Jesus? Or is it based because you're so fearful? Is it based because you're so anxious? Is it based because, in a lot of this, in part of the thing, and let's be honest, like part of social media is we love takedowns. Do you just, want things to happen because you want the other side to be punished? Mm-hmm. Whatever your other side is. Mm-hmm. And so then you go, okay, well, what am I actually trying to accomplish? And that's why these conversations, and I've struggled with how a lot of church leaders have handled it. But again, that's not for me to be accountable to. But I struggle with that because I'm like, my job is not actually to figure out how the U.S. political system is supposed to work. My job is supposed to be to love my neighbor. And in the people that I get to interact with, I get to interact with some council people. We got to interact with some MPs and MPPs. And I mean, that's about as high as we go in terms of human structure. God didn't put me in a place where I was meant to influence, the world peace. But God did put me in a place where he said, you're supposed to love your neighbor. And some of your neighbors, some of the people you're going to interact with are not going to like you. They're not going to agree with you. You don't get to treat them poorly because of that. But the only way you ever live that way is if Jesus is like, yeah, I'm following him. Like that's what I'm doing and I'm choosing that. And so then from a church standpoint, man, what other thoughts you got? My brain is racing on some of this because I have so many thoughts and opinions and questions and concerns because as soon as I'm concerned about, like, I say this and then I still have hatred in my heart. And I say this and I still have bitterness.
You ask yourself, what would drive a person to, in my brain, so whatever the situation is, like, I thought about I've been thinking a lot because I don't know if it's on my social media feed, like a lot, because it's like that time frame, but like 9/11, mm-hmm. Like why would people fly planes into a building? Like what would, like there are so many motivations out there that I go like, okay, what what would drive you to feel like you should hijack a plane filled with people who are moms and dads and sons and daughters and you have the right to end their life? Right. Like I just, my brain just like, and I know there's probably been 1 or 2 times in my life where I've had the type of hatred, like over something that's happened to me, where I've been like, I wish that person was dead.
Yeah.
Like, I really do. I wish that person was dead. Like, and I wouldn't have a problem being the person to make that happen. Like, because that would feel good.
Right.
And yet I look at circumstances like this and I'm like, what? Right. It just blows my mind. Like, when I think about human nature and the brokenness that we have, like that separation from being a person of faith and someone who's trusted Jesus Christ and has a relationship with God through him because of the finished work of the cross. And, when I'm next to him, I don't feel that way.
Right.
When I'm next to him, he's willing to sacrifice. He's willing to give up life. He's willing to allow himself to be put down so that others can find the healing that they need. Right. And being next to him, you have that. But like, I'm not going to say that I don't get the motivation of the person that committed that, sure, who committed murder, because I understand it.
Okay, so a couple thoughts that ran into my head. The one is, and I want to get back to this yet, but one of the things that, if I were not a Christian, one of the things that I would look at with 9/11 is, this is why I hate religious people. Because you did it because God, right? That was a big thing. Like, I'm doing it to serve God. I'm doing it to, right? So I want to get back to the other thing that I do think is really, really vital in terms of trust is, can you trust that God will get justice? Like, if you think about that situation, you think about where you are.
Yeah, in my situation, the only thing that would bring me down is that belief.
That's it, but it has to be there. Like, if
I would have to continuously come back to, I gotta leave it to him,
right?
Because he knows, and then I have to be willing to look at myself and go, I gotta leave it to me, because like, he's gonna judge me.
Because I think that's the hard thing, is you get into a spot, and I don't want to downplay it. It's hard. It is hard. And my life has been fairly good, so I don't even want to speak to what some people have gone through. But do you believe that God's going to make it right? Because if not, then you have to. And the problem with us trying to make it right, there's no means of doing that.
No.
Right? I think Will has been awesome at teaching on this and talking about, like, you cannot get justice. Like, you can kill this guy now, and we can death penalty him, but that's not justice. That was revenge. So now the person's dead, but it didn't actually bring a dad back to life.
It didn't return,
right? Like,
the thing that was broken.
So that's not justice.
Right.
It's just vengeance, and maybe deterrence or whatever else you want to put in there, but that's not justice. Can I trust God with that? But then secondly,
I think it's important to clarify with that statement, because some people are like, what are you talking about? It's not justice. What we're speaking about, a justice, is a restorative that makes it right, the thing that was wronged.
Well, like,
so when someone's life is taken, right, for us to think that taking someone's life is justice, what we're saying is that it's not going to bring that person back.
Right.
So what we're saying is that the actions that we're going to follow on won't actually restore,
right,
that life that was taken.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to say, is that at the end of the day, we can't do an action that will resurrect the death that's occurred, the separation, the divide, the whatever it is. We can't. Now, we can feel good that someone, got punished for doing that. But at the end of the day, I think when you talk to people,
right,
they would say that, well, I never got back what was taken to me.
If somebody kills your spouse in a drunk driving accident,
you never get that person back.
No matter what happens to the other person. So you can say, again, that's when we talk about justice, you're going to spend your whole life without that person.
Right.
So is that now just? Are we now equal? No, we're not. We're not at all, because equal would be bringing my spouse back.
Right. It would never bring back. And that's what we're trying to say when we're making that statement.
So then secondly, go back to this God thing, and I think this is so crucial. This is why Paul interrupts his letter to the Corinthians to be like, look, you got to remember, guys, love. And if whatever you think is prophetic leads you away from love, it ain't of God. If you think whatever is leading you in whatever thing, and it does not end in love, it's just not of God. Paul knew this. And the reason he knew this was that before he was, Paul the apostle, he was Saul, and Saul was an incredible leader in the Jewish establishment. Mm-hmm. And his pursuit of God justified him murdering They went out on a crusade against Christians. I don't know if Saul ever actually murdered anybody. I don't want to be clear on that. But he was a part of it, right? And even when
throwing him in prisons or whatever happened.
Who was the guy that got stoned? Stephen. When Stephen got stoned, it says Paul was there holding the jackets.
Approving.
Right. And so his pursuit of God. And so when he writes this, let's remember who this guy is. He's like, if you miss this,
you could end up the way I was.
100%.
Yeah.
And so then he writes and he says, look, you're going to pursue God and you're going to get passionate about it and you're going to get zealous. And that's awesome. But sometimes when you get really zealous about it, you end up allowing your anger or your fear or your whatever to bring you to a place where now your love of God is turned into a hatred of somebody else. And so then Paul interrupts his letters, and he does this multiple times. There's 1 Corinthians 13 is the most common one. But in the middle of all this, he goes, just pause again. Like, yeah, they're speaking in tongues. Yes, there's apostles and prophets and all those things. But faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Here's what love looks like. So if you've got a list of wrongs of that person you're so angry about, you got to deal with that. Right? Like, there's all those things, and I feel like that's the part, again, when we pursue after Jesus and we allow that, the thing that we don't want to give up is control. I struggle to not have my input on this thing and to just say, well, I'm going to let God handle it. I know we say that, but we don't live it. If we're going to let God handle it, I don't need to respond to everything on social media. I don't need to feel like, one of the pressures they put on pastors, and I mean, you talk about this often, what in the world am I supposed to say in response to every cultural thing? I don't know.
I'm not in that culture. It's like
not even just that, even in our culture.
Every family argument when you have no idea what
I don't know.
What are we talking about?
Even if we were just to say Malahide, there are some things I know. Lots I don't.
Yeah. A lot, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you go into, and so I think for us, part of what we're hoping to do with this, at least I'll just speak for me, but usually Patrick's on the same page. I'm trying to process some of my own stuff and trying to go like, is the way I'm responding good? Is the way I'm responding heading in a good direction? Because we've made some choices, and I'm not asking you to answer the question, but that's part of what we're trying to do here is process. Like, for us who spend a lot of time and have a lot of people to talk to us about this and a lot of people who are looking at us in these moments, I want you to understand where we're coming from. I would love to be able to be more open on social media because I enjoy that and I think I have something to add. But God has endlessly said, but I did not call you there. I called you here. We tried to leave. We tried to go to Mexico. We tried to convince God to send. He says, no, this is where I want you. Yeah. So yes, even when we do, our social media stuff, we send it out and we limit it to our little part of the world because this is where we feel like our neighborhood is. This is the neighbors that God has called us to. And until God brings other neighbors in, that's not our responsibility.
Yeah, I almost feel like most people that are on social media should apply like a 72-hour rule. We talk sports about the 24-hour rule.
Yeah.
Parents are not supposed to talk to coaches for 24 hours after the game.
Yeah.
Rarely gets followed.
You need to go eat a good meal. Yeah. Have a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
But again,
reconvene. It almost feels like because you don't have any context.
Right. But you're set up to fail.
Right.
Like you're literally on social media. I wish people understood that you're set up to fail. When I scroll my social media, 3/4 of what comes across is not people I've chosen to follow. It's not people I know. And they just randomly send stuff out and try to get you to click on it.
Yeah,
and so now you have people.
They want their performance metrics to reach a certain standard, and all they're doing is trying to make sure that they can go to their advertisers and make money off people commenting about different things that are going on in society because they're making a profit on us trying to figure out right and wrong or good or bad.
If you were to give in a few sentences people advice onto how to live within this culture, dealing with the anger and the frustration and the fear, what are some of the practical things that you do in your life that you kind of go, as I follow Christ, follow me? And I know it's a big question, but I feel like some of this, man, that really resonated with me before when, as John Mark Comer was teaching, he talked about the whole, people use so many of those phrases, follow the Holy Spirit. I don't know how do I follow the Holy Spirit? Love it. I'd love if the Holy Spirit practice. And so I just felt like at the end of this, we need to be like, okay, what do you practically do to navigate some of this?
The first thing that popped into my head was my mom would always say, it's funny, she said, Patrick, what goes around comes around.
Mm.
And I mean, it's a modern take on an old saying that you reap what you sow.
Mm.
So if you're going to be out and you sow kindness and love and caring and understanding and patience and humility, you're going to get that in return.
Right.
It will come back. What goes around comes around. If you're going to go out and throw fire at everybody, and you're going to get that back. And, I think it comes back to like treat the person next to you the way that you would hope to be treated.
Right.
It doesn't matter who that person is. Treat them that way. Treat them the way that you would expect to be treated. And I think without it being at the time, those sayings, a core value of who Jesus is, coming from her and her post-Christian or post, Judeo-Christian, system of life that she was in. I mean, it's love your neighbor. It really is. It's love the people around you, think the best of them, benefit of the doubt always before judgment, conversation before conflict. I seek to understand. Half the time when you're like, oh, that's why you did that. Okay, well, that makes sense, because I can go back into my, 50 years of life and go, I did that right there too. Okay, I get where you're at and how you're trying to understand life or figure it out, or, oh, that person just lost somebody. They've, financially they're tight. This pressure's on their life. I can see why they're like that. Right. That makes total sense. Right. I think for me, some of those things are core principles. Like, even with this situation, I'm like, man, I think of, what would drive a person to put themselves in a place to do something like that. Like you have to be hurting. Right. Like, you have to be desperate. Like, there's something that, right. Like, and then, and not to say, like, to be very clear, I don't think it's right to harm people. Right. I really don't. I don't think that's like, I don't even like it when I'm playing a sport and I harm somebody. I don't even like, like there's certain, like that might be me. Like, I just don't, like, but to me, those things I think really matter from I think it's do unto others. I think what goes around comes around, because it's true. It just is true. Right. When you surround yourself with kindness, and that's what you show, you'll get that in return. It's true. It's a law. It's a rule. Right. So those would be for me. What about for yourself? I'll turn the question over to you, since it's just a small one when it comes to life. Like, and I know, like, and we don't want to shy away from the reality that there's a lot of people on both sides of this circumstance that are very energetic, and very passionate about.
But let's be clear that there will be another issue when this one's over. So it's not like we just have to get through this one. Like, this is why these conversations matter so much. Is that 20 years ago the big conversation was divorce, and then 10 years ago it was this, and then now it's this, and then next year it's gonna like. There's always something. Like, humanity is endlessly divided, and there's endlessly things that fire you up, and so I think it really matters. I think for me, what I've needed to do to stay sane has looked very different through the seasons. I would argue strongly in my 20s, there was nothing inside of me outside of a ridiculous desire to follow Jesus. Like, when I look back, like, I don't know. I don't know why I did what I did or why we made the choices we made. That's what I think Jesus wants me to do. And away we went. And in my 30s, I think a lot of that followed, but you start realizing and living within the reality of what you're doing. And so for us, that was just like, oh, snap. Like, it's not like life was busy and now it's going to slow down. Like, no, we got a big family and we got complexities. And so there's some of that weight that kicked in. And then in my 40s, as my body starts getting more tired and coming out of COVID and some of those things, I certainly see there being differences. Like, I don't think my answer would be very similar to what it was 10 years ago. And so when you're listening to this, your answer may be nothing like mine is. I think who you surround yourself with matters significantly. And I wouldn't say in the sense of like, we've talked about this, like me, you, and Trav are pretty close. We don't hang out outside of work. We really don't much. We do little bits here and there. I think of my relation with Sean, some of the guys in my small group, like once a month, something like that. Like, but having people around you who pour into you really, really matters. I think knowing what fills you up, because I think a lot of it, if you can just be really human for a second, when we're hungry and tired, we're just more grumpy. And so when you think about even the ability to have self-discipline, the more tired you are, it's like any other muscle. It's going to be weaker. When is most of people's time spent on social media? It's evenings. You're exhausted, you're tired, you're a bit brain dead. So there's a lot of those things, so figuring out what fills you up. And then one thing that we've done this year is I've tried to make decisions that I know are good for me, even if they're hard. And so trying to be a little healthier, trying to be a little more active, trying to be quicker to say I'm sorry, trying to be more honest in some of my feedback. There's things like that are just unique to me, because what I find, if I'm in a better place, I'm much better able to respond to this. When I do get really mad, knowing, like, one of the things I've learned about fighting with Josie is that I suck at fighting. I am authentically dumb when I'm angry. And I know this. And it frustrates me. I'm not good when I'm angry. I don't have a good wit about me. I just kind of snap, and then I'm like, okay, let's fight. And then I say stupid things. But it's not like I say like well thought through stupid things, or like just stupid things, like just dumb. And so then I know this about me. And so then the pride part of me will see stuff and say, I need to respond. But the intelligent part of me goes, but if you do, you'll regret it. And so I feel like I always have those little things kind of battling in my mind. And so one of the things I've done with social media, for a while there, I did 1 minute a day on my phone, just because I was going to be cool and break the whole, it's not realistic. But what I've done now is I've got half an hour between all my social medias, including YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everything. And once I've been on the apps, a combined half an hour between all 5 apps, it just shuts it off. And I found that to be really healthy for me, where I'm like, I won't waste a lot of time going down rabbit holes, because I'm like, I don't have time. Like, this sucker is going to end. And so I think a lot of it comes down to actually doing the work of figuring out, okay, well, what works for me? There are people, like, we know people who, what works for them is they get up early in the morning and they do all the devotions then. Some people go out, and work out first thing in the morning. Some people, whatever that thing is, figuring out what that looks like to you. And how do you stay re-energized and recharged? So I think that's been a big thing for me. But I do think content that I allow into my brain matters a lot. And because I am a person who I would actually love to be a lawyer or run for politics. I love it. It's just not the life God has called me to. But if I am not careful, I know that I will get wrapped up in this stuff. And so there are alcoholics who know that they cannot take another drink or they will go down that. And for me, I already know this about myself. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be that person. I've seen where it leads people. And I love the words of Jesus. Go love your neighbor, man. Like, pursue after God. God's going to restore you and change you and mold you and shape you and energize you and all those things. And then go and love your neighbor. And wherever that leads us, it leads us. But I think that's been, from a practical standpoint, like, it's a lot of little things. But if I can keep myself in a better spot and you become more aware, I know when I'm going to fight. I know when I'm angry. And so I know we've done this in the office before, where we kind of look at each other and you just kind of go, oh, okay, one of you's mad. And so then we just find a way to take some time or whatever. And so I think there's some simple things like that. But anyways, our time's almost up. And I mean, I hope this comes across well. Like, I am not in a position where I wanted to voice my political opinion. What I want to do is I think we need to take pause and look in the mirror and look around us. Is what we see God? Are we in a place where our hearts are pure enough that we see God? Or when we look around is all that we see is us? And I think that really matters. So having said that, any other quick closing thoughts before our camera turns off?
I think just let's seek peace and let's seek love and let's follow Jesus.
Right. How does Paul say it? It's great. We're with whatever, like, and all of your ability seek peace. What is the verse like?
Oh man. Yeah.
Come on, Trevor.
Not me.
Anyways, he says it really well. Do your part. You can't. Conflict is two people.
Yeah.
You can't always force, but with all of your strength, with everything you have, there's such a good phrase. Sorry, guys, but you can Google it. Go to your work. You can chirp us for not knowing it. With that being said, love you guys. I hope your day is blessed. Hope you have a good day.
Praying for the community.
Yeah.
Blessings.